Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Uh, so we are on lesson 2 of waiting. I'm finding that this is just a very common thing Christians do. It's a common theme all throughout Scripture. There is waiting everywhere you look. And I start out with, actually, I'm starting out with Job a little bit, but he was someone I looked at just yesterday. And I thought, oh, I'm going to start with him because I had never really thought, when I think of Job, I do think of persecution, trial, suffering, all of that. But I didn't necessarily think of waiting. But of course, if you think of it just a little bit, you can realize he's waiting. Very often we have no control over the waiting times in our lives. In fact, probably most of the time we don't. But what we can control is our attitude. Because I was thinking, well, Job didn't have any control either. And there was nothing he could do to make it better necessarily, nothing he could do to change it, to bring about the end quicker. So what was it that was exemplary, sorry, I'll get it, in his life? And it was his attitude. It was the way he looked at it. And isn't that the same way it is with us?
So what you're saying is that maybe majority of the time of waiting, all we can do is trust God.
Yes. Our heart attitude is what God is looking at. And the verse that led me to Job is James 5:11. Behold, we count them happy which endure. Happy which endure, because endure is the waiting. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end, or the result of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful, which means extremely compassionate and of tender mercy. Now you could look at the life of Job and question that. Where's the mercy? Where's the tender compassion? But it's there. It's there. And Job did have patience. And so I wanted to look at him just a little bit to find out what this was, what it looked like for Job. We all know about, so I'm not even going to go into what happened at the very beginning of the book of Job. But can you imagine? He had 10 children and he lost them all at the same time. We think it's bad to lose one, and I can't imagine. I can't imagine losing one, much less 10. And he was a very wealthy man, probably the wealthiest man in those parts where he lived. And yet, God, in just, we don't know how long it took, but within a few days, probably, he was reduced to a pauper. He lost everything. And, that by itself would not have been as bad as losing the children, I think. But all of it together, and this was Job's reaction. Job 1:20. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped. Now, it affected him. He was a human being like all of us. And he rent his mantle, shaved his head. Those were signs of extreme sorrow, and fell on the ground and worshipped. And so the first thing I thought of, and this is crucial to our waiting, we must accept the circumstances of our lives from God. Every bit of it. Every bit of it. And that will encourage us and help us as far as our heart attitude, because we know God and we know that He's a God of love. We know His characteristics of that He is very pitiful, extremely compassionate is what that means. And so we can trust him. When all these things happen, we can fall down at his feet and rely on him. He is the one that will help us through it. And when the first reaction is to get mad at God, we are cutting off the support and the help and everything that we need. So Job accepted his suffering from God. He didn't get angry and swear or rant against God. On the contrary, he worshiped. And he said, verse 21, naked came I out of my mother's womb, naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. So see, that was God. He didn't say Satan. When actually it was Satan. But God allowed it. God is in control. Satan cannot do anything that God does not allow him to do. And we know that through this story, or majorly through this story. The Lord gave, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. So, something else then is going to happen. Satan had come to God and said, well, of course Job serves you. You've blessed him beyond belief, and you gave him 10 children and wealth.
Put a hedge around him?
Yes. He said, put a hedge around him, yes. And God said, okay, you just can't take his life. So those are the first things that Satan did. And he probably looked at Job's reaction and thought, it didn't do what I thought it would do, so I'm going to, of course not. It's because those things weren't as important as Job's own life, his physical body. Let's see what he does when you touch that. And of course he told God that. And so God said, okay, but you can't take his life. So went forth Satan from the presence of the Lord in Job 2:7, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And I figured that some of the commentaries would give us some idea of what they think this might have been. We don't know for sure, obviously, what it was, but
Boils would have been bad enough, regardless of whatever else.
oh, I know. Boils, I can't imagine.
One makes it worse than, whoa.
And it said sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And so it was apparently some skin condition with scabs or scales such as, and I can't pronounce that. This disease, as attested by physicians today, matches the symptoms of Job's afflictions: inflamed ulcerous sores, itching, degenerative changes in facial skin, loss of appetite, depression, loss of strength, worms in the boils, running sores, difficulty in breathing, darkness under the eyes, foul breath, loss of weight, continual pain, restlessness, blackened skin, peeling skin, and fever. Can you imagine? This by itself.
Close up.
I thought of that too. We're saying that Alice has pain too. But this by itself actually would have been extremely difficult. But to add it with losing your children and to losing your means of living, your income, it would have been enough for anybody to just, I understand why his wife said, curse God and die. So in Job 2:9, then his wife said unto him, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. So as these troubles come on Job, we find that his attitude is more and more amazing. It's just amazing. He knew God. He was close to God. That's what enabled him to have this attitude in the first place. But that's what supported him during this time. If he had not been as close to God as he was, I think he would have cursed God and died. it
Though that his own wife couldn't
right.
encourage him.
Yes, she could have been.
Me think of the ladies in Proverbs where it says it's better to live in a little corner of the rooftop than with a brawling wife.
Yeah.
Several times it says that.
Right, and God kept her.
Yeah, that's the only thing he didn't take.
Yeah, but we see just the amazing fortitude of Job. And so here, even when he was hurting physically, Job did not have a wrong attitude towards God. That could only be because he was close enough to God to know him and to know and trust that God had his best at heart. Even though I'm sure Job wondered, we'll read it. I picked out just several places in the book of Job so we could see how he felt and yet how his attitude was. And none of us have had all this happen to us like Job did, and hopefully never will. But it gives us a good example of how we can be in our trial and reasons for it. So look at Job 7, 1 through 6. This is what Job said. And all these scriptures are, we know that the book of Job has a lot of chapters where his friends spoke. Well, God even said at the end of Job, they didn't have it right. So I'm not putting down what they said because it's not conducive to our lesson. But this is what Job felt. So in Job 7, is there not an appointed time to man upon earth? I want us to zero in on that. Is there not an appointed time to man on earth? We all have appointed times. Are not his days also like the days of an hireling or a hired hand? So you have a hired hand and they come and you have a specific time for them to do specific things. Well, that's what God has. He has specific times for the things in our lives. As a servant earnestly desireth the shadow or the shade, and as an hireling or the hired man looketh for the reward of his work, so am I made to possess months of vanity, months of emptiness. This kind of makes me think that we don't have any idea how long Job was in this condition. But he says months of vanity. I'm wondering if it at least was months. And wearisome nights are appointed to me. When I lay down, I say, when I shall rise, or when shall I arise and the night be gone? I am full of tossings to and fro unto the dawning of the day. My flesh is clothed with worms and clods of dust. My skin is broken and become loathsome. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle and are spent without hope. Now, he actually did have hope. We can see that in the things that he says also. But he's human and he can't just, I don't know if it's possible for a human being to just be on top of everything all the time. And that
because
also,
that's part of the trial.
yes, it is. It is part of the trial. And it makes me encouraged a little bit for the times that I feel hopeless. Job did too, even though God is lifting him up as a man of integrity and patience. He still accepted his condition from God. I don't see that he addressed Satan. He just dealt with God. Job 12:9 and 10. Who knoweth not in all these that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this? In whose hand is the soul of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind. I had a person tell me one time, just after they had been through a hard time, they said, I did things the right way. I followed God. I followed his way. And look what I got for it. And that person was having a hard time, and it was pretty much in his mind at that time to not follow God anymore because he felt like it didn't work out for him. And the thing that he faced wasn't anything near what Job faced.
See, when you talk about having the breath of all mankind, I can remember in the high school Sunday school class, and a lot in Proverbs, of kids thinking, well, God doesn't care, God doesn't love you, nobody, kind of like Eeyore. And I said, but you think about it. The Bible says